Joining us here is the man who kicks things off every single day and then at certain parts of the year ends it every single day on NBC Sports on Peacock. The host of PFT Live, the creator of Pro Football Talk, and the author of Playmakers, which is still available where all books are sold. Mike Florio back here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. How you doing, Mike?
Rich, I'm doing great. It's great to talk to you. I love the Peacock conversation. I know the terrestrial audience didn't get to hear it. But the good news for me, since we're no longer on over-the-air FCC-regulated radio, I was talking to DP about this yesterday. Sims and I have been testing the limits of what we can say before we get a phone call from somebody higher on the food chain.
Yeah, you guys are working blue, aren't you, Mike? Mike, you guys are working blue on occasion, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely.
Did you guys know this?
Sims always lives blue. He doesn't have to work it. That's just him being him. And he's starting to have a bad influence on me after 5 years. So we've been dropping a few from time to time, and nobody has said anything. So like Dan said, he and Keith Olbermann used to do it on SportsCenter late night to see if the executives were watching, and they just came to the conclusion that they weren't. Well, so maybe that's what's happening with us.
Stuart Scott and I always talked about how we wanted to do a pay-per-view SportsCenter where we could say whatever we wanted to say and use whatever words we wanted to use. And boy, we never got to do that, obviously. But you got to pick and choose your spots. Which story or player has caused you guys to curse more lately?
Well,
Mike?
Probably Tom Brady, just because he's everywhere. And that's a point Sims made today that I think is a valid one. When you look at all the stuff Brady's doing, he's still playing. He's got the $375 million deal with Fox that is looming whenever he finally retires. He's got the Netflix greatest roast of all time series. He's an executive producer, and he's the subject of the first roast. He's got the movie he's executive producing about the 4 octogenarians who go to Atlanta to watch him play, or Houston to watch him play Atlanta in Super Bowl 51, I think it is. I mean, he's everywhere. At what point is he overexposed? At what point is there a natural backlash because people have reached their lifetime limit of Tom Brady?
Never.
How about this? How about this though, Mike? Let's just put it this way: even with everything that you just said, and I'm sure there's more to come too, because we're not even talking about his clothing line and everything else, and his outstanding social media game that puts him on our timeline every now and then. That still hasn't even swung the pendulum back from the first 20 years of his career where he did nothing and he hardly said anything. And all he did was just the Patriot way. And I think we're just seeing him let his freak flag fly a little bit. And maybe we're seeing a side of Brady that we're going to see more of when he's in our living rooms in front of 40 to 50 million other households on big Fox games. We're coming.
He is that kid that went to college after growing up in the house without a drop of alcohol anywhere to be seen and just goes crazy, right?
Yeah.
Freshman year, drinking everything he can find, making up for lost time.
Yeah.
And you're right. The 18 years of silence maybe helps people deal with the fact that he's everywhere now, but he's everywhere now, and he keeps finding new places to show up. It's just amazing. And there will be a critical mass at some point, I think, if he just keeps popping up everywhere and anywhere that we happen to be paying attention.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. In the, I guess, more serious quarterbacking world right now, the NFL and Deshaun Watson are having a sit-down confab about his 22 civil cases right now. That's happening this week?
It's happening this week, and they've got to make a decision. And they've got to understand that there's a timeline that's created by the procedure that the NFL adopted in 2020. It's kind of a sandwich between the commissioner, an outside person, and the commissioner. The league will propose a suspension. There's an independent disciplinary officer hired and paid jointly by the league and the union that will investigate, presumably have a hearing, issue a decision on what suspension or discipline, if any, there will be. Then the commissioner has the exclusive appeal jurisdiction, which means he can, in theory, as long as there's any discipline imposed on Deshaun Watson. Let's say the league says we want to put, I'm just throwing out an example here for illustration. Let's say the league says we want him out for a whole year. Disciplinary officer says, it's 1 game. The commissioner on appeal can say, it's a year, and that's it. Final binding, boom, bang the gavel, and see you later, Deshaun Watson. But whatever plays out, it's going to take time. See, I think they're setting this up for next Friday, Memorial Day weekend, little bad news dump on the 3-day weekend, what they propose the punishment to be, and then the disciplinary officer would kick in after that, and this all gets wrapped up by Labor Day weekend, so everyone will know whether or not he's going to be playing week 1, or if not week 1, when he'll be back.
That's your timeline for this thing, huh?
I think it makes sense. They got to start doing something at some point. The NFL doesn't like to make a decision, Rich, until it has to. But at some point, the mere fact of delay is the mistake. I know they don't want to step in it by doing something prematurely, but at some point you have to know when you need to move. And I think they owe it to the Browns fans, to the opponents who have to figure out who are we going to be facing, and also to those 7 sportsbook partners out there that like to put the Browns back on the board. We don't have the Browns futures bets. We'd like to make a little money off the people that want to put some money on the Browns, either to make the playoffs or not, to win over or under whatever their win total is going to be. They're off the board on that. There's no win total for the Browns yet because we don't know who the quarterback's going to be.
But does the league and has everything been does the league know everything? Is the overarching question, and let me backfill a little bit with you, Mike Florio. And have all the depositions between Watson and his accusers taken place? Because if I'm the NFL, last thing I want to do is make a determination, start this entire process that you just talked about, and then find out something in one of those depositions that makes my ruling or the league's ruling look lenient. And a perfect example is what I read on your site through your Twitter account at Pro Football Talk, that there of an excerpt from one of the depositions, the first accuser of Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson admitting, yeah, he did send her a text to apologize because he saw her tearing up after their massage, hoping that he's sending a text saying, I hope you can still work. We can still work together again. And of course, it leaves a question of anybody who's reading this saying, what happened to make somebody cry, and him to acknowledge it through a text because it was so obvious. That's what I'm saying. I mean, is this all done? Does the NFL know everything in time for next Friday?
And that's a great point. They're not going to know everything until the 22 cases are resolved. And if they go to trial, it's going to take every bit of next offseason and beyond. You're talking about 22 different cases, 22 different juries, 22 different plaintiffs packed into an offseason. Good luck scheduling 22 trials, assuming that they aren't settled. And he could have settled 18 of them last year. The Dolphins wanted all 22 to be settled before they would trade for him. 18 were ready to go, 4 held out, and Watson decided to not settle any unless he could settle all. I think in hindsight, he probably, if he were being candid, would say, would have been nice to knock this group of 22 cases down to 4 cases, a little easier to manage. But, Rich, because of what you said, that's why I think there's a chance that what they'll do is make a decision on punishment based on what they already know, what has been admitted, what they learned from their conversations with the accusers and with Watson, what he admits to, what he doesn't. Remember, Rusty Hardin, his lawyer, admitted last year that some of these massage therapy sessions he would line up via Instagram would become consensual sexual encounters. That may be enough for the league to say we're troubled by this pattern of behavior. We think intervention is required. A lot of the reasoning that applied to Ben Roethlisberger back in 2010 when he got suspended 6 games reduced to 4 with no arrests, with no charges, with civil cases eventually settled. I think what they could do is suspend him a certain amount now and leave the door open for the possibility, based upon how the civil cases go and how they're resolved and what the verdicts are or aren't, to take action again later. They kind of did that with Antonio Brown in 2020. He was suspended 8 games for a variety of off-field misdeeds. He still had a pending civil lawsuit alleging that he had engaged in sexual assault and rape, and they said, we're going to leave the door open pending what happens here. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag. It's kind of a half measure, but I think it makes sense. It deals with what they know now, and it leaves the door open to deal with what they may learn later.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk here on the Rich Eisen Show. So let's open the door in a couple of offshoots of what's happening right now. Again, Deshaun Watson in the league meeting with one another, an interview happening between the league and Deshaun Watson. And while we're waiting for the results of that, the ripple effect of his contract, his $230 million all-guaranteed contract. I've got Zadarius Smith coming on in hour number 2. Your reporting has already pointed out how other contracts, Von Miller being one of them, helped kind of upset the conversations between Smith and the Ravens to the point where the Ravens were like, yeah, you keep coming back to us. We're not going to pay that. He winds up in Minnesota. We already had Brett Veach on last week, and he basically admitted the Christian Kirk contract, the Devontae Adams contract, totally blew up what was going on between the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill. Is there something up with the Cardinals and Kyler Murray because of what was paid to Deshaun Watson? How are the ripple effects based on your knowledge so far?
Well, look, we've heard from multiple owners who have said openly that they're troubled by the fact that Watson gets a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract because agents are going to turn around and expect the same thing for other quarterbacks. And look, most franchise quarterbacks get every penny of their contracts, or they get renegotiated and they get a raise before the contracts expire. But when you put that much of a guarantee into a deal, you have to put a certain amount of money into escrow. It becomes a very expensive proposition. It affects your liquidity as an owner. It's just something that the league didn't want to do. So the Browns have crossed a bridge now that other teams may get pulled across. And the Kyler Murray thing has really died down. I think that Murray and the Cardinals have kind of found a way to reach an awkward truce, at least for now, and then maybe they're going to try to work out a contract later this summer, because I think that Murray made it sufficiently clear that if another team out there was interested, they would have made a run. And I don't think anybody made a serious run. I think for the same reason the Cardinals are concerned about paying him a ton of money now, other teams are going to be concerned too. Durability, how his game is dramatically limited if he can't put the mobility into action. We saw him in the playoff game where he just wasn't running like he usually did. He had that ankle thing that I think bothered him for the rest of the year, and he was ordinary. He looks a lot shorter when he can't just take off like the Roadrunner whenever he chooses to do so. So I think that they've reached an understanding and they're going to try to work something out. Now, can they come to a middle ground? Can they find a number in a market that now has like a $30 million spread from the highest paid quarterback to the 10th highest paid quarterback? I don't know. But I think they're going to work it out. But the Deshaun Watson contract obviously is a major data point in any quarterback contract negotiation going forward, and it's going to make it harder for some of these other deals to get done.
And then what about Mayfield? I have been vocal here saying that I don't think there's any way that Humpty Dumpty could be put back together again with the Browns and Mayfield, should the Browns hold on to him as an insurance for a Watson suspension. I just think that's folly. That's just not going to happen. Stranger things have, I understand. But Mayfield hasn't said anything lately. Any idea what his camp's strategy is on waiting out whatever the Browns are trying to wait on as well?
Well, Mayfield hasn't said anything directly, but ESPN.com had that hashtag long read about 13 days ago with chapter and verse details of things that bug Baker Mayfield, with fingerprints all over it from Mayfield and people close to him. I know we're source guessing is frowned upon in this business, but I don't care.
Right.
It clearly was stuff coming from Mayfield's camp. And the one thing, Rich, that made me think the way that you do, that Humpty Dumpty is busted to smithereens, Mayfield and or people close to him believe that they left him in the game Week 17 at Pittsburgh, prime time, when he was struggling, to make him look bad, to make it easier to pivot over to Deshaun Watson or someone else. If he believes that, if he truly believes that they pulled that maneuver, I don't know how you come back from that. And if the Browns are thinking, we may need this guy all year, we don't know, maybe we need him, you better be kissing his butt now to get him back on board with the idea that there could be a mutual benefit to be served here. Hey, Baker, Seattle, Carolina, Cleveland. Where's your best chance to have the kind of year that sets you up for a big contract in 2023? It's Cleveland. So let's find a way to work together, and we'll give you your freedom after this season, and you can go and you can cash in. I don't know, like you said, I don't know that Humpty Dumpty gets reconstructed, because I think too much damage has been done to that relationship.
Well, and certainly you want to talk about how damaged the relationship is. If your supposition is the is the truth, for the lack of a better phrase, is in fact what happened, where Mayfield's camp thinks he was left in week 17 to struggle because it gives the Browns an easier public front to go pivot to Deshaun Watson. I mean, Deshaun Watson essentially pivoted away from the Browns in the middle of the sweepstakes. Right? I mean, that there was a 24-hour period. There was a 24-hour.
$230 million fully guaranteed. The Browns were like, oh crap, we can't go back to Mayfield now. He hates us. What are we going to do?
Exactly.
Let's up the ante and let's get Deshaun Watson back on board with us.
Right. So there was never a guarantee that Watson would ever look in the direction of the Browns. They were kind of in last place until the escrow account got opened up. So. That would strike me as a very poisoned relationship if you're parsing out week 17 moments by the coaching staff. And Stefanski, who I think is certainly in dealings that I've had with him, a straightforward, straight up guy. It's just maybe as simple as, hey, they told him we're going to look at other people. That pissed him off. And then they fell all over themselves for Watson. And that pissed him off to the point where he said goodbye to Cleveland and front loaded his goodbye. Right? Like told Seinfeld, I'm not breaking up with you. You're not breaking up with me. I'm breaking up with you. All of that. That's why I don't know how it's possible to put that all back together again. And then what's Seattle thinking? Just like they really are waiting for this to play out while Pete has his competition that he adores. I don't know how Mayfield would even fit in.
I think Pete and John Schneider realize that they can just sit back and wait and sit back and wait and sit back and wait, and maybe they can steal Baker Mayfield if they even want him.
Exactly.
There's nothing to suggest they want him, but that may be part of the poker face that they're trying to project. Then meanwhile, they love Geno Smith. I mean, people think, Drew Lock will be the quarterback. He's got to beat out Geno. Pete has said multiple times Geno has the lead. Geno knows the offense, and Geno played well last year when Russell was hurt. There was nothing like a blowout win over the Jaguars where Geno was 20 of 24 to get Russell Wilson back on the field, lickety-split, even before he was ready. They were chanting Geno's name in that Thursday night game against the Rams. So I think Pete would love to be able to win games with Russell Wilson's understudy, with Russell Wilson in Denver struggling against the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the rest of the AFC.
Before I let you go, there's still Jimmy Garoppolo that looms over everything that we talk about with Baker Mayfield and the Browns, because there's another guy who's actually got Super Bowl experience and last year took a team damn near to it, sitting out there. And the subtext of the conversation there is something I brought up to Steve Young when he called in earlier this week, Mike Florio, about Trey Lance not being ready and the rumors and the conjecture that the Niners just can't bring themselves to finally rip that Band-Aid off of Garoppolo and go to Lance. What are you hearing about that scenario in San Francisco as we're sitting here?
I've consistently heard concern that they're not convinced Lance is ready. And how do you know he's ready until he's your guy? Week in and week out. They haven't seen enough from him to make him think he's ready. They didn't see enough from him last year to be confident about thrusting him into the fray when they clearly would have done it if he had shown he was the best option. And from Garoppolo's perspective, the worst-case scenario would be they show up for camp, they compete, Lance emerges as the starter, Lance steps up, Lance is ready to go, and then they go to Jimmy Garoppolo after the preseason and they say, hey, Jimmy, Lance is number one, you're number two. We can't pay number two $25 million, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay you $10 million to be the backup, and maybe we'll put some incentives in there, playing time, whatever, so you can earn some of it back if you end up playing more, if he gets injured or whatever. But you're the backup. You got to accept this deal, and if not, you're going to get cut. He's got no guarantees until he's on the roster for week one, and what do you do then? All the spots are taken. All the depth charts are filled. I think that's why Garoppolo, even more than Mayfield, because Mayfield at least has a guaranteed salary for this year at $18.8. Garoppolo's $25 is not guaranteed. Now, he's got a lingering injury guarantee of $7.5 million, but once he passes a physical, that goes away. After that, he's got no guarantee. So the sooner he can get out of there and land somewhere else, the better off he's going to be, because he could end up, she stands alone, right after Labor Day weekend with no home, no salary, no anything, if the 49ers keep him around long enough to come to the conclusion that Lance is ready.
Did you say cheese stands alone, Mike? Did I hear
Isn't that a line? The cheese stands alone?
That's the Farmer in the Dell. You went Farmer in the Dell on me
Yeah,
right
all
there, I
right,
think.
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
You want Humpty Dumpty, so we're even.
That's right.
Hey, we had a long talk yesterday about Romper Room. I don't know if you remember Romper Room. I had forgotten about Romper Room.
Of course.
But I used to love at the end when they pull up that magic mirror and they start rattling off the names. And if they said your name, like, because you were the only one in the world with that name when you were 4 years old, that makes your week when you heard your name at the end of Romper.
I love it. I guess I should. I just had to pause, put a pin in our conversation real briefly when I heard that. But
now, were you Richard or Richie when you were 4?
Oh, I was Richard when I did something wrong in the house. Richie in grade school, and Dick behind my back. So that's probably what I was growing up. Not to my face. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself, Mike Florio. Thanks for the call, brother. Always really appreciate it. Everybody checks. See you, Mikey. Good spot, Mikey. There you go. Mike Florio, everybody, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Everybody should buy his book, Playmakers, and check him out on PFT Live every single day right here on Peacock. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.